A white track stretched toward the horizon, a flat, sterile expanse that swallowed the horizon line. It was silent, waiting. The camera swept across the starting line, capturing the scale of the assembly. 100 people stood in a staggered formation, a timeline of human existence gathered in one place. At the front, a toddler shifted on hands and knees, staring at the white surface with intense focus. Beside him, a teenager stood with feet planted wide, muscles tensed, ready to explode into a sprint. Further back, the line extended through every decade of life. A 90-year-old sat in a specialized racing chair, hands gripping the rims, eyes scanning the distance with sharp precision. The track seemed to vibrate under the weight of their collective presence. Every breath taken in the group was audible in the stillness. The air felt heavy, charged with the static of 1,000 individual ambitions colliding. No one spoke. The wind did not stir. The camera pulled back, turning the group into a single jagged line against the blinding white floor. The host stepped into the center of the track. His stride was long, purposeful, and he stopped exactly where the sunlight hit the white floor. He did not look at the cameras. He looked at the 100 people. He raised both hands, palms open, and the crowd went dead silent. With a sharp, sudden gesture, he pointed toward the edge of the track. A heavy crane lowered a massive glass box into the center of the arena. It landed with a dull, heavy thud that vibrated through the ground. Inside, the light caught a mountain of paper. The host walked to the box and tapped the surface with his knuckles. The sound echoed across the empty space. He did not say a word, but the message was clear. The air in the arena shifted instantly. The tension of the race was replaced by a sharper, colder focus. A teenager in the front row leaned forward, his fingers digging into his palms. The 90-year-old adjusted his grip on the racing chair, his knuckles turning white. The host smiled, stepped back, and let the light from the glass box wash over the 100 faces, illuminating the sudden, raw greed. A single, piercing tone cut through the air. The silence shattered. The front line erupted into motion, 100 bodies lunging forward at once. The teenager at the center pushed off with such force that his heels kicked up a spray of white dust. He was a blur, already 10 yards ahead within seconds. Behind him, the pack surged like a breaking wave. The toddler, caught in the wake of the initial rush, tumbled onto his side as a pair of running shoes narrowly missed his hand. He scrambled, pushed his palms into the track, and began a frantic, low-to-the-ground crawl, his breath coming in short, sharp gasps. Further back, the 90-year-old in the racing chair fought for traction. He pumped his arms with rhythmic intensity, but the chair groaned under the strain. His face tightened, veins pulsing in his neck as he strained to keep his wheels from skidding. The middle of the pack was a wall of elbows and desperate strides. The physical toll was immediate. A man in his 40s stumbled, his chest heaving, his face slick with sweat, as he tried to keep pace with the younger sprinters. The toddler stopped, looked up at the sea of moving legs, and let out a sharp cry of frustration before pushing forward again. The pace settled into a grueling, rhythmic thud against the track. 3 miles in, the energy of the start had evaporated, replaced by the sharp, metallic tang of exhaustion. A man in his 30s slowed, his hands braced on his knees, his chest heaving in ragged, uneven gasps. He stumbled, his legs buckling, and he slumped onto the white surface, unable to push further. Around him, 2 others slowed to a walk, their faces drained of color, their movements heavy and uncoordinated. They were the first to drop, their ambition outpaced by the sheer physical demand of the distance. The track became an obstacle course of discarded effort. Runners swerved to avoid those who had collapsed, losing precious momentum in the process. Yet, in the center of the chaos, the 90-year-old remained a constant. His racing chair hummed with a low, steady vibration. He did not sprint, but he did not slow. His arms moved in a perfect, mechanical cycle, pushing the wheels forward with relentless, measured force. He bypassed a fallen runner, his eyes fixed on the horizon, his breathing controlled and shallow. While the middle-aged competitors around him gasped for air, and clutched at their sides, he maintained his rhythm, his knuckles steady on the rims. He was not racing against the others anymore. He was racing against the distance itself. The gap between him and the fading pack grew. A siren shrieked, silencing the rhythmic thud of feet. The host appeared on a massive screen overlooking the track, his face projected in high-definition clarity. "Listen up!" he shouted, his voice booming across the white expanse. The rules just shifted. Ahead, the track splits. Take the left, and you face a steep, narrow incline that cuts the distance in half. Take the right, and you stay on the flat, but add 2 miles to your journey. He grinned, eyes scanning the remaining runners. Choose wisely. Speed kills, but time is running out. The pack skidded to a halt at the junction. The teenager, chest heaving, stared at the incline. It was a brutal, jagged rise that demanded explosive power, a gamble that could snap his remaining strength. Beside him, the 90-year-old in his racing chair didn't hesitate. He veered right, choosing the long, flat path, his arms moving in a steady, rhythmic grind. Others panicked. A runner in his 20s sprinted toward the incline, his face twisted in a mask of desperate ambition, only to stumble as his legs locked up. The track stretched out, empty and vast. Only 5 runners remained, their bodies pushed to the absolute edge of collapse. The teenager led, his stride shortened, his head down, focused only on the white surface inches from his toes. Behind him, the 90-year-old followed, his racing chair humming with a persistent, mechanical whine. The air had grown thin. Every inhale was a struggle, a sharp, burning sensation in the lungs. Then, a flicker of light appeared on the horizon. The finish line. It was a thin, glowing ribbon against the stark white, signaling the end of the ordeal. The sight of it hit the group like a physical blow. The teenager stumbled, his momentum faltering, but he forced his legs to turn over. 1, 2, 3 more times. The silence of the track was absolute, broken only by the wet, ragged sound of breathing and the rhythmic rasp of rubber against the ground. He only looked at the finish. The space between them and the end began to shrink, but the tension in the air grew heavy, thick enough to choke on. The teenager surged, his legs driving into the track with desperate, uneven force. He was a blur of raw, unrefined power, his lungs burning with every jagged breath. Beside him, the 90-year-old was a study in cold, mechanical precision. His arms pumped in a rhythmic, unwavering cycle, the racing chair cutting through the air with a steady, low-frequency hum. The teenager pushed harder, his stride lengthening, but his left calf seized, a sharp, white-hot cramp that sent him stumbling sideways. He gritted his teeth, forced his weight onto his right leg, and recovered his balance in a single, violent motion. He did not slow down. He could not. The senior saw the stumble, his eyes narrowing, his grip on the rims tightening until his knuckles turned pale. He pushed his chair into a higher gear, the metal frame vibrating under the sudden increase in torque. They were neck and neck now, the teenager's heavy, rhythmic footfalls clashing against the sharp, metallic click of the chair's bearings. The finish line was a glowing, impossible target in the distance. The teenager threw his head back, his face twisted in a mask of pure, physical agony, while the senior leaned forward, his back arched, his entire focus funneled into the next rotation. Power versus precision. Youth versus iron will. Neither gave an inch. The gap between them held steady, a razor-thin margin of air that neither could close. They were locked in a singular, brutal duel, moving as one toward the end of the line. 10 meters left. The teenager's lead foot caught a slight ridge in the track. His ankle buckled. His momentum shifted violently, and he pitched forward, his hands clawing at the air to regain balance. He hit the ground hard, but his momentum carried him forward in a desperate, sliding lunge. Beside him, the racing chair surged, the wheels spinning at maximum velocity. The senior leaned his entire body weight into the final push, his arms locked, his jaw set. The teenager's fingers scraped the white surface, his chest inches from the tape. The senior's front wheel crossed the line at the exact moment the teenager's shoulder hit the mark. The silence of the track shattered. A roar erupted from the stands, a wall of sound that drowned out the mechanical hum of the chair. The teenager scrambled to his knees, chest heaving, his eyes fixed on the finish line. The senior sat motionless, his hands still gripping the rims, his breath coming in sharp, shallow gasps. The judges converged on the line, their heads bent over the high-speed cameras. The winner had been decided. The winner pulled himself upright, his legs trembling from the final, violent exertion. He stood on the track, chest heaving, his skin slick with sweat. He looked toward the center of the arena where the glass box sat. Inside, the mountain of cash caught the stadium lights, casting a sharp green glow across the floor. He walked toward it, his gait uneven, his breath still ragged. He stopped inches from the glass, his hands resting on the cold surface. He did not speak. He simply stared at the stack, his fingers twitching against the transparent barrier. The host stepped into the frame, his movements measured, his presence drawing the focus of the entire arena. He gestured to the crowd, then back to the winner. "Look at this," the host said, his voice echoing off the stadium walls. A toddler, a teenager, a 90-year-old. Every stage of life represented here, pushing against the same finish line. He walked to the edge of the glass box and tapped the metal frame. This race was never just about the speed. It was about the capacity to keep moving when the body demands rest. It was about the refusal to stop. The host turned to the winner, who was now leaning his forehead against the glass, his eyes fixed on the prize. The crowd fell into a heavy, expectant silence. The host raised his hand, signaling the end of the tension. We saw the limits of human endurance today. We saw the raw, unyielding drive that defines us from our first steps to our last. The winner finally looked up, his gaze meeting the host's, his face a map of exhaustion and sudden, overwhelming clarity. Now, there was only the stillness of the arena and the weight of the victory.